Have you ever wondered what the future of global commerce might look like? In the grand scheme of things, the world is experiencing a shift in demographics, especially in wealthy nations like Japan, Korea, China, Germany, and Italy. It's no longer business as usual. The age-old consumption-driven stage of life that once fueled these countries' economies is gradually waning. There just aren't enough people in these prosperous nations to keep the wheels of global commerce spinning as they used to. Consequently, a new economic model is needed, but not all is doom and gloom. There are exceptions to this trend, including Southeast Asia and North America. In these regions, the old system can still work. These areas continue to operate under the traditional economic model, keeping their economies vibrant and their populations engaged. This is why their ties are getting tighter and their relations closer, economically speaking. However, this doesn't translate to a global trade order. Instead, it's more of a regional trade order. And while this model can work, it does leave other regions on the outside looking in. But this isn't necessarily a bad thing. If we look back at Europe's history, for instance, we'll see that it's been a bit rocky. So, the development of a political economic model that kept political protest under control and incorporated it into the political system rather than involving force was a significant victory for Europe. However, due to the urbanization trend, this victory has been a one-off. The next 10 to 20 years will see the United States gradually retreating from maintaining the economic coherence of the broader system. This will lead to significant changes in the global economic landscape. So, as we can see, the future of global commerce is pointing towards regional trade orders rather than a global one. The changing demographics, the need for new economic models, the exceptions, and the emerging regional trade orders paint a picture of what the future might hold. And it's a future that's both intriguing and full of opportunities. Now let's turn our attention to Europe and its economic model. A model that has been shaped and reshaped by centuries of history, political upheaval, and socio-economic change. A model that has managed to keep political protests in check, incorporating them into the political system rather than resorting to violent conflict. This is a significant achievement, particularly when viewed through the lens of Europe's turbulent history. However, the forces of urbanization have thrown a wrench into the traditional economic gears of Europe. This trend has presented a one-off challenge, creating a shift in the demographic and economic landscape that has long underpinned the European economic model. As we gaze into the crystal ball of the future, we see a looming shadow. The European Union, the economic and political bloc that has been a key driver of Europe's prosperity, is facing a potential existential crisis. The heart of this crisis beats in Germany, Europe's economic powerhouse. As Germany edges towards mass retirement, the financial burden of maintaining the EU will become increasingly onerous. Imagine the single biggest provider of funds, Germany, turning into a net beneficiary. The scales of economic balance tip, and the survival of the EU starts to look questionable. This shift could trigger a domino effect, with countries reassessing their positions within the Union and possibly even deciding to leave. The first to exit might be France, whose demographic profile is one of the healthiest in the developed world. The prospect of becoming the largest payer into the EU, subsidizing the existence of Germany, might not sit well with the French. After all, their plan from the beginning was to have the Germans foot the bill, not the other way around. With the single biggest provider of funds turning into a net beneficiary, the survival of the EU seems questionable. So what does this mean for the future of Europe's economic model? Stay tuned as we delve further into this topic in the next scene. Let's now consider the likely scenario of a regional breakup of the European system. As the United States pulls away from maintaining the economic coherence of the broader system, the European Union as we know it may cease to exist. The crux of the matter is Germany, one of the biggest contributors to the EU. As the German population ages and moves into mass retirement, it will become increasingly challenging for them to fund the EU. The moment Germany transitions from a net contributor to a net beneficiary, the EU's survival becomes questionable. This may lead to countries exiting the EU, with France possibly being the first out the door. Contrary to common perception, France has one of the best demographies in the advanced world. Would France want to be the single largest payer into the EU to subsidize the existence of Germany? Unlikely. This could result in a regional breakup of the European system, giving birth to separate networks based on shared interests and demographics. We might see a Scandinavian network, where the demographics are favorable and the partnerships with London and Washington are strong. We're already seeing signs of this with Sweden and Finland moving towards NATO. Another possibility could be the emergence of a francophone world, independent and distinct. Iberia, under Mexican sponsorship, could apply for NATO membership. The future of Central Europe, however, remains uncertain. This region, where demographic decline is most extreme, can't be a pocket power by itself. It's too large an area with deeply entrenched economic issues. The question for the United States will be whether there are countries in Central Europe that they are willing to pay for to ensure their continued existence. The future of Europe appears to be moving towards regional networks rather than a single unified system. What role will the United States play in this new global commerce landscape? In this evolving global environment, the United States will find itself at a crossroads. One of the challenges it will face is deciding which countries it's willing to financially support. This isn't a new scenario for the United States. In fact, it's a role they've played before. Consider Israel, Armenia, Egypt, and Jordan. These are countries that the United States has financially supported for a long time. Each of these nations has been able to continue to exist in part due to the financial backing of the United States. This support has not only been about the survival of these nations, but also about maintaining a certain balance in global politics and commerce. Now, apply this model to the changing landscape of Europe. As the European Union faces potential dissolution and countries are left to fend for themselves, the United States will have to make some tough decisions. Which nations, if any, will it choose to support? Think about Central Europe, where the demographic decline is most extreme. These countries, unlike Italy, are on the wrong side of the Alps and can't exist as pocket powers on their own. The economic issues in this region are deeply entrenched, and the area is simply too large for the United States to easily pick up. So, the big question for the United States will be, are there countries in Europe that we are willing to pay for them to continue to exist? It's a question that will require careful thought and strategic decision-making. Remember, the United States' choices aren't just about financial support. They're about shaping the future of global commerce. The decisions made by the United States can set the tone for international trade, influence global economic trends, and determine the balance of power in the world. The United States' choices will play a significant role in shaping the future of global commerce. So, what does all of this mean for the future of global commerce? Well, we've covered quite a bit of ground, so let's take a moment to circle back and pull together the threads of this conversation. We started by acknowledging the shift towards regional trade orders, as the traditional consumption-driven economic model is no longer sustainable for most parts of the world. Southeast Asia and North America are the exceptions, with their systems becoming increasingly interdependent. We then dove into the heart of Europe, where the economic model that once kept political protest under control is now facing the threat of obsolescence. The European Union, as we know it, may well disappear. This isn't a gloomy forecast, but rather a pragmatic one. As Germany, the largest provider of funds, approaches mass retirement, it will be less able to support the EU financially. This could set off a chain reaction, with countries exiting the Union, starting perhaps with France. As the European system breaks apart, we may see the emergence of regional networks. A Scandinavian network could form, given its favorable demographics and tight partnerships with London and Washington. We might also see a francophone world, an Iberian bloc under Mexican sponsorship, and a big question mark over Central Europe, where the demographic decline is most extreme. Finally, we examine the role of the United States in this changing landscape. Will the US step in to support the continued existence of certain European countries, much like it has done for Israel, Armenia, Egypt, and Jordan? That remains to be seen. The future of global commerce is complex and uncertain, but one thing is clear: it will look very different from the system we know today. The world is evolving, and with it, our understanding of what it means to be a part of the global economy. As we navigate these changes, it's essential to keep the conversation going, to question, to learn, and to adapt.